Before, we're all closer than this. The Electoral College margin is almost identical to what it was in 2016.
How law enforcement is showing restraint today compared to
this election were overturned. Of partisan vengeance. Congress will either override the voters, overrule them, the voters, the states, and the courts for the first time ever, or honor the people's decision. Will either guarantee Democrats' delegitimizing efforts after 2016 become a permanent new routine for both sides, or declare that our nation deserves a lot better than this. We'll either hasten down a poisonous path where only the winners of election actually accept the results, or show we can still muster the patriotic courage that our forebears showed not only in victory but in defeat. The framers built the Senate to stop short-term passions from boiling over and melting the foundations of our republic. So I believe protecting our constitutional order requires respecting the limits of our own power. It would be unfair and wrong to disenfranchise American voters and overrule the courts and the states on this extraordinarily thin basis. And I will not pretend such a vote would be a harmless protest gesture while relying on others to do the right thing. I will vote to respect the people's decision and defend our system of government as we know it.
They are telling members of Congress to shelter in place. They are evacuating members of the House and Senate from doing their constitutionally prescribed duties. There are fights. There are people breaching police lines. There are people climbing up walls. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No. And I don't think anybody else has either. In fact, I know they haven't, not in the United States. I mean, maybe in some third world country. But, you know, here you got a situation where the president's stirring the pot. He's got his allies in there. They have unleashed something that they cannot control. And they need to understand that. Now, control can be regained. And again, I'm telling you now, it's not going to be pretty. And if I was there, I guarantee you, we would do whatever we had to do to get them the hell out of there. But, you know, it never should have gotten this far. Never should have gotten this far.
President Trump he tweeted a comment, not what I think you would want if you were the police chief right now. He wrote, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." It's odd that he said stay peaceful given the fact that this crowd is not peaceful. So there's no way that they could stay peaceful. They have already stormed the Capitol. What would you want President Trump to tweet right now to de-escalate
What I'd want the president to do is shut the hell up and get out of the way. I mean, the guy is he's like cancer. You know, how much more can you give me? You know, at some point in time, if he's not going to do the right thing and tell him to get the hell out of the Capitol and act like they've got some sense, then just shut up. He stirred him up. He got this whole thing going. This is as close to a coup attempt as this country has ever seen. That's what you're looking at, folks. That is what you're looking at. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And a lot of people are responsible for this.
From those kinds of restraints, unlike in other countries, Donald Trump really took advantage of it throughout his presidency on that call to Georgia, on the call to the president.
I mean, this is insane. I mean, I've not seen anything like this since I deployed to Iraq in 2007 and 2008. I mean, this is America, and this is what's happening right now. The president needs to call it off. Like, call it off. Call it off. It's over. The election's over. And the objectors need to stop meddling with the primal forces of our democracy here. They need to stop it. Like, there is a cost. They think they're just having a protest debate and they can get away with it because it's not actually going to overturn the election. Well, now we're seeing the cost of that play out in real time. And if we don't think other countries around the world are watching this happen right now, if we don't think the Chinese Communist Party is sitting back and laughing, then we're deluding ourselves. So call it off, Mr. President. We need you to call this off.
And let me just remind and reinforce to our viewers, you are a loyal conservative Republican. You represent a district in Wisconsin that Trump won, and you're a supporter of his, but you're just acknowledging the reality that he lost. What do you want him to do? Because he has not. He could go to Twitter right now and say, please, go to the mall, or please protest peacefully, please get out of the Capitol, but he's not doing it. What would you want him to do, Congressman?
This will be the first time in the last 4 years I'm encouraging him to tweet. But go to Twitter and say, it's over, please go home, thank you for your support, I support the peaceful transition of power.
To speak to you, I initially was going to talk about the economy, but all of you.
This is looking at inside. Look at this. These protesters are inside Statuary Hall right now. You see the statues. This is a moment I know.
Democracy is under unprecedented assault. Unlike unlike anything we've seen in modern times. An assault on the citadel of liberty, the Capitol itself. An assault on the people's representatives and the Capitol Hill police, sworn to protect them, and the public servants who work at the heart of our republic. An assault on the rule of law like few times we've ever seen it. An assault on the most sacred of American undertakings, the doing of the people's business. Let me be very clear. The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, do not represent who we are. What we're seeing are a small number of extremists dedicated to lawlessness. This is not dissent. It's disorder. It's chaos. It borders on sedition. And it must end now. I call on this mob to pull back and allow the work of democracy to go forward. You've heard me say before in different contexts, the words of a president matter, no matter how good or bad that president is. At their best, the words of a president can inspire. At their worst, they can incite. And therefore, I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege, to storm the Capitol, to smash windows, to occupy offices, the floor of the United States Senate, rummaging through desks, on the Capitol, on the House of Representatives, threatening the safety of duly elected officials. It's not protest, it's insurrection. The world's watching. Like so many other Americans, I am genuinely shocked and saddened that our nation, so long the beacon of light and hope for democracy, has come to such a dark moment. Through war and strife, America's endured much. And we will endure here, and we will prevail again, and will prevail now. The work of the moment and the work of the next 4 years must be the restoration of democracy, of decency, honor, respect, the rule of law, just plain, simple decency. The renewal of the politics. It's about solving problems, looking out for one another, not stoking the flames of hate and chaos. As I said, America is about honor, decency, respect, tolerance. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. The certification of the Electoral College vote is supposed to be a sacred ritual, which we affirm. The purpose is to affirm the majesty of American democracy. But today's a reminder, a painful one, that democracy is fragile, and to preserve it requires people of goodwill, leaders with the courage to stand up, who are devoted not to the pursuit of power, or the personal interest pursuits of their own selfish interest at any cost, but of the common good. Think what our children watching television are thinking. Think what the rest of the world is looking at. For nearly 2.5 centuries, we, the people, in search of a more perfect union, have kept our eyes on that common good. America is so much better than what we've seen today. Watching the scenes from the Capitol, I was reminded, as I prepared other speeches in the past, I was reminded of words of Abraham Lincoln in his annual message to Congress, whose work has today been interrupted by chaos. Here's what Lincoln said. He said, "We shall nobly save or merely lose the last best hope on earth." Went on to say, "The way is plain, peaceful, generous, just, a way which, if followed, the world will forever applaud and God must forever bless." The way is plain here, too. That's who we are. It's the way of democracy, of respect, of decency, of honor, and commitment as patriots to this nation. Notwithstanding what I saw today and we're seeing today, I remain optimistic about the incredible opportunities. There has never been anything we can't do when we do it together. And this god-awful display today is bringing home to every Republican and Democrat and Independent in the nation that we must step up. This is the United States of America. There's never, ever, 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 ever been a thing we've tried to do that we've done it together. We've not been able to do it. So, President Trump, step up. May God bless America. May God protect our troops and all those folks at the Capitol who are trying to preserve order. Thank you, and I'm sorry to have kept you waiting.
The words of a president there from the president-elect, Joe Biden, saying America is so much better than what we're seeing today, calling on President Trump to step up and to condemn what he called a mob on the steps of the Capitol, where Joe Biden will be inaugurated in just 14 days. It was a blistering speech condemning an unprecedented assault on our democracy, saying it does not reflect a true America, saying it's an assault on the rule of law. John Carl, it's hard to imagine that Donald Trump will listen to Joe Biden, but the message was clear.
The message was clear. It was straightforward. Step up. Come out and uphold your constitutional duty and call on this to stop. I just spoke to somebody close to the president who put it in starker terms, saying this is somebody who was a senior official in the Trump White House, telling me that if he were man enough, he would go up there and he would demand them to leave, demand these people to leave. But he doesn't appear to be listening to any of it. We've seen a growing number of people very close to the president say that he needs to do exactly what Joe Biden just said that he needs to do, and to come out there publicly, call on his own supporters who he directed to go to the Capitol building to now stop, turn around, and to leave.
John Carl, thank you. Mary Bruce, we've seen this balancing act from Joe Biden ever since the election. Been trying to get on with the business of the transition, prepare for the president. He wanted to come out and talk about the economy. Today, instead, it called on to condemn.
Only the winners of election actually accept the results or show we can still muster the patriotic courage that our forebears showed not only in victory but in defeat. The framers built the Senate to stop short-term passions from boiling over and melting the foundations of our republic. So I believe protecting our constitutional order requires respecting the limits of our own power. It would be unfair and wrong to disenfranchise American voters and overrule the courts and the states on this extraordinarily thin basis. And I will not pretend such a vote would be a harmless protest gesture while relying on others to do the right thing. I will vote to respect the people's decision and defend our system of government as we know it.
Well, first of all, I condemn any of this. This is appalling. This is un-American. This should never happen in our nation. And whatever is going on right now needs to stop. What transpired, my office is right there by the chambers. And I watched the crowd overtake the barricades. And I cannot thank the Capitol Police enough for the job that they have to do. They broke windows. They overran the building. We had to stop our proceedings in the middle of it. And as a nation, I know we sit back and we're appalled by what we're seeing. But I want everybody to take a deep breath and understand we all have some responsibility here. I don't care what we've ever said on Facebook, what we've ever done other. We are all Americans. We need to stop. We can disagree with one another, but to take it to the level has gone beyond anything I've ever envisioned that was possible in this nation.
And we're seeing the images of smoke inside the Capitol building, the protesters walking freely through Statuary Hall. Congressman, the fact of the matter is that President Trump has not condemned this, has not called on the protesters to stand down. You've been a staunch ally of the president. Can you convince him to come out right now? Will you do that?
As I was stuck within my room, I called the president, explained to him what was going on. I know he put a tweet out. I begged him to go talk to the nation. Don't do it by Twitter. I know that he's doing a message right now. I called back. This has got to stop, and I know a message is supposed to come out shortly.
So you believe the president is going to be speaking about this, and when you say a message is coming shortly, what does that mean? Is some kind of a videotape message?
That's what I believe. When I would just call him back again to him, and I understand that's what was taking place right now.
And you talk about all of us taking responsibility, and that's well placed. I think all of us have to think about and reflect on what's going on as we see this image of a mob moving through the Capitol that none of us could ever imagine in this country. What responsibility do you feel yourself as Republican leader of the House, as someone who did not recognize the election of Joe Biden, who has protested these votes?
Let's not put words in each other's mouth, okay? The one thing I will tell you is I believe every election should be fair and accurate. I have no problem. I still have House races that aren't determined yet. I've got a person who lost a race, a Democrat in the House, contesting it inside Congress right there. That's fair. Those are the rules. That's the possibility. But nowhere does it ever say to take this type of action. We can disagree with one another. You've been in those chambers.
Trying to break into the door and flood into the Capitol. They have been unsuccessful. We have seen officers coming out the door and doing a fog or some sort of smoke on those Trump's lawyers who are attempting to get into the building. We are hearing people chant "Stop the Steal" and USA. And for those of people that are down here on the grass down below, it's a very joyous occasion as they watch what's happening right up here. It's a crowd of people here trying to continue to get lots of flags, which makes it just a little bit difficult to get really good view as to what exactly is going on up here. So here on the video, which is about the thing going on, finals towards open. Supporters closer to the door, attempting to get inside, stay on the side of the building, which are now, but looks like they're trying to climb out one.
Know the greatness of this nation. I know we are exceptional. These, at our lowest points at times, can we wake up with each other? Can we realize that what has gone on has gone too far? I can disagree with a person and still love them as a person. We can debate. What should happen here is the public should be able to be sitting in that chamber watching us debate and just think of the things that we debated in that chamber, from the 13th Amendment, from the idea of civil rights. But the idea of this transpiring today is wrong. And anybody associated with it is wrong.
That is very clear, Congressman. Thank you for saying it. Thank you for condemning what we've seen right there. And good luck healing that breach in the coming days in this new Congress. Appreciate your time right now. We have been told that, in fact, the president has released a video. We're going to be playing it as soon as we can right now. First, I want to bring in Kellyanne Conway, who, of course, has been counsel to the president for the last several years. We don't have the video yet, Kellyanne. We're hoping to have it ready to air in just a minute. What is the president saying? Is he prepared to condemn this action?
That is something to behold. I've watched the video, George. Thanks for having me on. The president tells them to go home and go in peace. He tells them he understands that they think that the election has been stolen, but there shouldn't be violence, to go home and to go in peace. And basically, he's telling the Capitol, telling people at the Capitol what, frankly, was my message to him over an hour ago, which is tell them to get out and go home. And these are not peaceful protests. And I want to tell everyone, particularly people who support President Trump, if you condemn looting and rioting this summer, and many of us did, you need to condemn it now. What I see, the images coming out of the Capitol, people think it's appropriate and legal and funny. It's not, folks. It's none of the above. To go looting through Speaker Pelosi's office, to go screaming through the bowels of our sacred Capitol buildings. And I'm telling you, these are extremists, and in many cases, they look like anarchists rather than people who are peacefully protesting.
But Kellyanne,
and I think they give a bad look
weren't these people
to the
incited
president's legacy and also the 74 million people who voted for him. That's
perhaps,
not the base.
but weren't they incited by the president himself? He was speaking to that group just hours ago, around 11 o'clock this morning. He was calling on Twitter for people to come out to these protests in Washington, D.C., saying they're going to be wild.
There shouldn't be violence of any kind. Destruction is not part of democracy in its purest form. There are many ways to dissent. There are many ways to disagree. There are many ways to be upset that maybe your candidate didn't prevail. Look, I was in Georgia on Sunday and Monday. I talked about the two Senate candidates, but you had a lot of people there talking about the presidential election still. And I've been in touch with the mayor's office, Mayor Bowser. I'm glad that the president has authorized the National Guard to go. I think that's very helpful. I know that she's got a curfew going on. That will be helpful. But this is a moment for all of us to come together. And George, I have to tell you, I hope these calls for unity are real. And I've thrown my hat into that ring as well. This, as I said about 4 years ago, that we are a country where the peaceful transition of power is incredibly important, and it's owed to each and every one of us as Americans. And I absolutely expect and hope that will take place. I'd also just like to say that when the president tells people go home and go in peace, he is directing them to leave the Capitol building now, and they ought to do it.
And we do have the video right now. So, Kellyanne, thanks very much for your time. Appreciate that. Let's show the President of the United States.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Well, the president did say go home there, but his message was wrapped in a lie. I want to bring in Chris Christie for more on that. He said the election was stolen. He said he won in a landslide. He said they're trying to take it away from you. You know that's not true. You've said it's not true. I guess this is a beginning for at least for him to say to come home. Apparently, we lost Chris Christie. I'll bring that to Terry Moran.
Well, it's a half a loaf at best. Well, one of the things that President Trump insists upon is that he not ever be considered a loser. And I think this, in some ways, is gasoline.
Now.
Exactly.
What you're seeing on Capitol Hill right now are people, to quote you, Abby, in his name, going to the Capitol, trying to steal the election for Donald Trump, the election that Mitch McConnell stood on the Senate floor just hours beforehand, not even hours, minutes before this happened, and said this wasn't even close. This wasn't even close. Donald Trump didn't even come close to winning this election. That is the reality. That is the top Republican in the United States Senate saying that, and saying it for a reason. And the Republicans you were talking about, Josh Hawley, I don't know yet about him, but Senator Cruz, I'm already hearing from an aide to him, this is not what he wanted. I think he also tweeted, violence is not the right way to go, so on and so forth, that he was doing his constitutional duty, which might not duty. He's doing what is allowed in the Constitution. And Democrats
but he wasn't.
Well, and
he was calling for something else.
Right. Well, Democrats in the past, this is almost besides the point because of what's going on here, but Democrats in the past, and you've pointed this out, have objected during this process, but they haven't done it at the behest of a candidate who refuses to concede the election. That has never happened. And that is the big difference here, because that is what these people, these rioters, are responding to. They're responding to the president and his enablers on Capitol Hill.
You know, I think about how we started this day, and I not looking back too far, but just to recall that hours ago, we were talking about the way in which Republicans had fed these conspiracy theories and coddled them for many, many months and even years, living in this imaginary world created by Donald Trump. And they had lost control of that, not knowing that hours later we'd be looking at this incredible scene. But this is the consequence of years of people in Washington refusing to have the courage to stand up and say right is right and wrong is wrong, and there are facts and there are fictions in the world. And there was a time in this town when the differences between the two parties were about policy, they were about taxation, they were about the role of government. Now the differences between the two parties are about who believes in facts and who doesn't. That should not be the case, but that is what we are dealing with right now. And I know, because I talk to Republicans all the time who privately will say that they want to get back to that time where they were talking about things that really mattered, but they can't, because they have nurtured this monster and now it is devouring them.
Ulysses S. Grant said in 1861, there are now but two parties, patriots and traitors. And it is time for the Kevin McCarthys and the Josh Hawleys of the world to decide which party they're in. I have my idea about what that might be. Anderson?
Jake, thanks very much. We
to say in the midst of all of this horrendous news that's going on here in Washington, something that none of us ever expected we would see in the nation's capital. I just want to make it official right now. CNN can now project that the Democrats will be the majority in the U.S. Senate. John Ossoff, the Democratic candidate in Georgia, he is defeating David Perdue, the Republican candidate. Earlier, we projected that the Democrat Raphael Warnock will beat Kelly Loeffler, the Republican candidate. So it's 50-50 in the new U.S. Senate. But the new vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris, she will be, according to the Constitution, the president of the Senate. So she will break the ties. So the Democrats will be in the majority. The Republicans will be in the minority. Anderson, this is important, but let's get back to this explosive situation that's developing here in the nation's capital. As I keep saying, something I never thought I would see.
Yeah, we started out this day saying that it is going to be historic, and it certainly is in a whole bunch of different ways. Obviously, Georgia turning blue is one of them. But we continue to watch the situation where there are still insurrectionists, treasonous people on the grounds of the Capitol, high-fiving each other, as you see there, just wandering around. Police are trying to maintain order, trying to get control back of the building and its grounds. David Axelrod, we heard from President-elect Biden saying, President Trump, stand up, speak out. President did release a video that was frankly shameful.
Not exactly what Biden had in mind, I think.
How do you see this day?
Well, You know, first of all, let me say about Biden's remarks, it underscores what we've seen since the election, because basically Donald Trump has resigned the presidency as of his election. He's just been working on this project of persuading people that the election was stolen from him, as we've dealt with a pandemic, a cyber attack from Russia, and many other problems.
He's been running a grift while people are dying.
And in each instance, Biden has stood up and played the role that people expect a president to play. And he did it again today and said the things that you would expect a president of the United States to say. As for the president's video, Dana was exactly right. I mean, there was a perfunctory message, which is go home, let's not play into their hands. But as he called these treasonous folks very special. And he repeated the idea that the election.
blended together this idea of going home and the fact that the election was stolen. That's why these people are here. And I would actually argue this wasn't just simply an organic, spontaneous protest. This is the result of weeks and weeks of disinformation being spread by the president, his supporters in Capitol Hill, people who support him in the media, individuals on social media. These people are reacting to the planning that took place in social media and that disinformation. So what do they need to do now? They're going to need to declare this as an unlawful assembly. They need to give people opportunity to clear the grounds peacefully. Then they need to remove people from the building. They need to clear the building. We saw videos of people going into the Capitol with large knapsacks. We've already got reports of explosive devices being located around Washington potentially. They need to make sure there's no explosives in the Capitol. They need to clear the grounds of the Capitol, and then they need to clear the street. And they need to keep people off the streets this evening because, as Pierre pointed out, there's probably a very high likelihood that violence would continue if you have large groups of people in and around the streets of D.C. That's where law enforcement is going to be focusing now.
And that's the question. Will the crowd be diminishing or not? It appears to have been growing over the last couple of hours. John Cohen, thanks very much. Let me bring Chris Christie back. We do have him connected right now. Well, Chris, the president did come out with a statement wrapped in propaganda.
Yeah, George, listen, I think that the statement was a one step forward, two steps back attempt. The president needs to make it unequivocal that these actions by these protesters is absolutely un-American and reprehensible. And there can't be any ambiguity about that. And I think there was a lot of ambiguity in that statement. Listen, I'm glad he did at least what he did. It's better than having done nothing. But it's certainly not what should be expected of a president in this circumstance.
It's hard not to contrast the message saying we love you, you're very special to his supporters, that you're right, that the election was stolen, with the words he had for Black Lives Matter protesters all through this summer, calling for law and order.
Well, George, at the end of it, what you're supposed to do as an elected official in this country who takes a constitutional oath is to always remember that the office you hold is bigger than you. Your responsibility in that office is bigger than you and your own personal interests. And I think that what that video showed was that the president was still placing his personal interests ahead of the interests of the country. And that's what he's been doing for the last 8 weeks, unfortunately. And this is a result. What we're seeing on the air right now is the result of that. And that's what we need to make sure we get back to in this country, is that these offices are a temporary public trust that you hold and hold with honor. And you can never allow your personal interest to overcome the interest that you're elected to serve. And unfortunately, I think the video showed that while the president got, better than saying nothing or just tweeting what he had been tweeting before, it was nowhere near sufficient to send the right kind of message, in my view. That conduct on Capitol Hill is unacceptable. It's un-American. And it has to be renounced in those very clear terms, in addition to saying, go home. At least he said that, but you got to say more.
Chris Christie, thanks very much. I want to go to Martha Raddatz out in the streets of the Capitol. The situation escalating?
It is, George, and it looks like they're starting to clear this crowd a little bit right behind me, north side of the Capitol. We heard 3 flashbangs, which means they're trying to push these people back. They were running very briefly. This is the area, at least on our side of the Capitol where we are, where there has been the most action. This is the area where these people are saying, let me in, let me in. We also heard some glass breaking back there. We obviously don't want to get any closer to that area, but they are starting to move out. There are areas here where some of the Trump supporters have started to leave. But businesses, you got to fight the establishment. Take it to the establishment. But we have some of these people moving out. Obviously, we don't have all of them moving out, and It's pretty wild up here, George. It really is truly out of control. We have lines of Capitol Police officers up there, but there's virtually no police presence here. And you're starting to get, again, like the Oath Keepers, and I walk by and they're clearly making plans about something, ask them if they wanted to go back in, and they said they did not. But I have no idea what they're up to. I don't think law enforcement has any idea what they're up to. We have some helicopters circling overhead, but we also have a curfew here at 6 p.m. and whether they start clearing people out before then or after,
with all day. Have you ever felt personally in danger today?
I mean, there's definitely threatening remarks to us. I would say this is a very dangerous situation. And as you know well, George, I've been in a lot of very dangerous situations. But it is so horrible to know we are in America where this is happening, on Capitol Hill. I'm not in Baghdad. I'm not in Kabul. I'm not in a dangerous situation overseas. We are in America. And when I know some people have mentioned this today, when the rest of the world looks at us right now, it is just appalling to think about the fact that we are on Capitol Hill. It's been breached. Someone shot inside. And all of this chaos right behind me, right in front of me, everywhere I look. And certainly there are people who are threatening us. And it is very different from Trump rallies. I often said at Trump rallies, they turn around and say, we hate you, go home. But then 2 minutes later, they're shaking your hand. This time, you don't feel that vibe at all. It is, they're warning us, they're threatening us, they're telling us we're fake. That's the least of the problem. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about that building and American democracy and what this all says about that today and how out of control this is and how we were not ready for this. And they don't care what Donald Trump just said. They really don't. It is so out of control and chaotic now. I don't know what the president can do, but I think it's going to take law enforcement to get these people out here, not Donald Trump.
An assault like we have never seen in a city. You've been in war zones all over the world. Tom Yamas, picking up on what the president was saying, I think we saw an essential truth about President Trump and his approach to the office in those remarks. He began with, I feel sympathy for you, I love you, we love you. His first and foremost goal over the last 4 years, if you look at every action, every statement, is to keep that core of the core of the core base bonded to him at the cost of everything else.
Yeah, when you talk to people who have worked for President Trump, either in the private sector or now in the public sector, they will tell you the most important quality, it's not smarts, it's not how to work around a business or politics, it's loyalty. And for Donald Trump, loyalty is the most important thing. So he will never trash the people, the Americans who are doing what we never thought would happen, something we never thought we'd witness. He will never trash these people because these people are loyal to him. And that message that he put out, and Martha, rightly reported, will have no effect on what we're seeing right now. The only thing that's going to change what we're seeing right now is once law enforcement, another group the president has touted over and over again, once law enforcement takes control of the situation, and as Martha said, it appears we're still hours from that right now. You could also make the argument that that message itself did more harm than good because at the beginning, as you pointed out, he starts with a lie. And that's what precipitated all this, that the election was stolen, which we know for a fact is not true, which the courts have said is not true. His message is out there. He recorded it. Will it make any difference? Martha Raddatz, who's there speaking to these demonstrators, these protesters, these anarchists, say it will not make a difference. Joe Biden, the president-elect, has spoken as well, calling on the president to do more. What's going to end this is law enforcement. And then after that, the question is, where do we go from here? And I wonder, George, if what we've seen today changes the mind of those Republican senators who were objecting to the Electoral College votes that were coming in today, that were going to be ratified today, that should have been ratified today. I wonder if this changes their sort of calculation when it comes to politics and whatever reasons they had in their head that they wanted to fight this.
Well, let me bring that to Mary Bruce. Thank you, Tom. Mary Bruce, and the members of Congress we've talked to today, the Republicans and the Democrats, there does seem to be some discomfort with what they've seen unfold today. Clear condemnation of the mob from Kevin McCarthy, but they are trying to draw a line between their actions protesting the election and what we're seeing unfold on the Capitol. Capitol.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of members, especially Republicans, sort of do some twisting here as they try to put some distance between themselves and their calls to object to the results of the election and the actual work that was supposed to be getting done here today and what we are seeing actually unfold in the Capitol. But all of that messaging, of course, gets muddled when the president comes out himself and in trying to urge everyone to go home, in the same breath, repeats these false claims that the election was somehow rigged. It is still very hard for those who are, supporting the president in this effort to try and distance themselves from that message somehow.
Okay, Mary Bruce, thanks very much. The mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser, is now speaking. She has imposed a 6 p.m. curfew in the Capitol. Let's listen in.
Press announcement from D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. Our regularly scheduled program will resume following the...
4, 3.
Good afternoon. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. I am here at the headquarters of D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department, where we are operating our emergency command center. I'm joined by the district's chief of police, Robert Conti. I'm joined by members of my public safety team. I'm also joined by the Secretary of the Army, Mr. McCartney. This afternoon, I announced a citywide curfew for the District of Columbia beginning at 6 p.m. this evening, going until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. During the curfew, no one is allowed to be outside in public places other than essential workers, which includes credentialed media engaging in essential functions. As you can see from video images, the unlawful behavior inside
very little
the
in terms of
United
response
States Capitol
from law enforcement,
building.
Wolf.
I continue
I want you to be careful over there. I know it's going to be
Washingtonians to
dark
stay
very,
home
very
and
soon.
stay
I'm really
calm.
worried
And
about
if you
what's going to
see
happen
something,
once
say
it's dark
something.
outside.
But above
Pete
all,
Montine
stay
is also
calm.
just outside the U.S. Capitol.
The behavior
Pete,
that
where
we
are you?
are
What are you seeing?
witnessing is shameful, unpatriotic, and above all, it is unlawful. Anyone who has engaged in these activities
apparently between
continues
this
to
mob of
engage
Trump
in these
supporters
activities
and
will
police.
be held accountable.
Police are
there
way
will be
outnumbered
law
by
and
this
order,
mob here.
and this
You can see
behavior will not
on
be
the Capitol
tolerated.
steps here. This
the
is the Senate
Metropolitan
side.
Police
Capitol Police
Department
standing
has
there.
been
In fact, just a few moments
deployed
ago,
to assist
we
the
saw
United
two
States
from this
Capitol
group of
Police
this
in
mob, these
in
rioters,
restoring
walk
order
up to the police,
the
actually
Capitol,
even
and our
walk
chief of
beyond them
police
for a
will
moment.
lead
We
the
also heard
command
3 loud
to
bangs
clear the Capitol
over on this
building
side
and
of the
establish
Capitol.
a perimeter
What we-
around the Capitol. I have requested both the Virginia State Police and the Maryland State Police to deploy officers, and they have engaged immediately to deploy officers to the Metropolitan Police Department to help regain control of the United States Capitol. I have also invoked several days ago a standing mutual aid agreement with our surrounding jurisdictions, and I want to thank them for deploying. Those jurisdictions include Arlington County, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, as well as Baltimore City. We want to thank them for sending their officers in, assisting us with public safety in the district, as well as the response to the United States Capitol building. Additionally, I want to
6 p.m. Until 6 a.m. Brian Todd, you're also up there in the middle of all of this. Tell us what you're seeing.
Right, Wolf, we're at the center steps of the Capitol on the east side, and we're going to kind of take you in a little bit tighter. You still see some protesters here really not concerned about the police. There's a protester on top of a government vehicle there. They've been standing on these government vehicles over here. This staircase, this center steps was packed a short time ago, and the police were standing just kind of to the side watching them. The area where we saw, Alex and Pete reporting from a little bit earlier is over there. We did see some smoke from some smoke grenades being deployed over there, and then that crowd over there kind of pushed back. And as they reported, you see that line of Capitol Hill police officers there on the steps kind of containing that area. But listen, the protesters had overtaken those steps as well earlier. 3 sets of steps here on the east side of the Capitol had all been overtaken by protesters. Now, 2 of the 3 are pretty much clear. This one is still not. And as you can see, let's take another shot of these protesters here on top of this government vehicle. The police have not moved in force just yet. And it really, as everybody's been talking about all day, this just kind of reveals the stunning vulnerability that the Capitol has been left under today. And, it's been evidence here on the east side, on the west side, where the confrontations with police were very tense. And we saw protesters climb these risers that were built specifically for the inauguration and start waving Trump flags on top of the risers. So they were allowed to, get almost anywhere they wanted on the Capitol grounds today. And as of now, we hear reports that the police are coming. We hear reports that the National Guard is coming in great numbers. You're not seeing it here, Wolf. This is, if they're coming, they're taking their time. And these protesters are seemingly, they're not inclined to leave, and they don't seem to be very worried at all right now.
It does look, though, Brian, like the crowd is thinning out a little bit.
You've tried to engage with some of the protesters today. What did you learn, Congressman?
Well, I wasn't so much just trying to engage with them. I was trying to keep them from getting shot. When they started breaking the glass out of the chamber, it sounded like shots were fired. Unfortunately, I've heard shots fired before, and that wasn't it. And so I was talking to them because a couple of the people got excited. If you've seen the picture, there's some, obviously Cat Police, rightfully so, had their guns drawn. And so I was telling them, guys, you're going to get shot. You're going to get killed. Is this what you really want to do? And then we just had a conversation to some degree. And there was a couple of them that was reasonable. There was a couple of them that wasn't. There was a couple of them that was just, they were antagonizers, and all they wanted to do was cause problems. And you can't reason with individuals like that. Unfortunately, this doesn't represent America and our democracy. We have a right to protest, but not like this.
Yeah, it's hard to reason once they've broken through all the barricades in the Capitol. Right. And these images coming from inside the House chamber are just stunning right now. From the talks you had with these protesters, do you have any sense of what they want to happen?
Some of the ones that were there, unfortunately, was just looking for a fight. That's what it was. Unfortunately, they were there to antagonize the crowd. That doesn't represent the rest of the crowd, but some of them were, and they antagonized them. They brought them along. But I want to tell you, the Capitol Police there, a lot of them got injured. A lot of them got injured. I went down to their triage center that was in the basement of one of our House office buildings, and I visited with each one of them. And there was numerous there. Numerous. If I use the word 25, I'd be underestimating it. And all of them were cut or bruised, had been hit, and that doesn't represent a peaceful demonstration. That doesn't represent what we've seen at Trump rallies or anything else. This was a different group of people, and even I found it interesting when I was visiting with some of the Cap Police. They said that these weren't your supporters. The supporters were fine. The ones that attacked us had evil in their eyes. This was separate from the protests. Even the Capitol Police. These are the guys that were injured. These are the guys that had cuts in their face and had their nose broke and all kinds of stuff. And unfortunately, that person that came through the door, I was right there when they came through the door and when that person got shot.
As soon as they possibly can.
Because the mayor, in her statement that was released, Chief Ramsey, said as far as this curfew is concerned, during the hours of the curfew, no person other than persons designated by the mayor shall walk, bike, run, loiter, stand, or motor by car or other mode of transport upon any street, alley, park, or other public place within the district. When you were the police chief, did you ever have a curfew like that?
There's no question about that, Congressman. We're glad you're safe.
I don't recall. During the IMF World Bank back in the early 2000s, there may have been a curfew. I just don't recall offhand. But nothing. We didn't handle anything like this. The Capitol Police got overwhelmed. There'll be a lot of people looking at what happened there. There's about 2,000 Capitol Police. I don't know why they didn't have enough people available to at least prevent this from happening in the first place. Of course, you can always hit a tipping point where you just get overwhelmed, but they got overwhelmed awful quick, and there's no way they should have gotten in that building, in my opinion. But we'll look at that later. that's kind of like the hot wash after the event. Right now, they got to retake the Capitol.
And they got to start.
They're going to have to do it.
I assume, Chief Ramsey, I assume they got to start arresting some of these people who broke windows and trespassed and just entered into a secure area.
Anybody inside that building, as far as I'm concerned, ought to be face down in handcuffs right now.
Yeah.
That's what they ought to be doing. I don't know what they're doing in there, but they need to be locking them up without question. But first, they got to gain control, and right now they don't have control. But they're
As you and I know, there's a lot of closed-circuit cameras inside that U.S. Capitol, so they're going to have a lot of evidence if they want to start doing all of that. What also worries me, Chief Ramsey, is that there's 14 days until the inauguration, and I suspect the local police, the area police, Maryland, Virginia, military personnel,
see right behind my shoulder there, this side, that side, standing by, forming that perimeter that Mayor Bowser talked about. Again, we're on the north side here, and there are long lines of police officers here. There are long lines of police vehicles the other way, and we are just over an hour from curfew, so it seems certain that they will probably try to clear out this area at some point once we pass that curfew point. We still see people over in the security area who say they want to get inside the Capitol. They are being kept away, but they aren't leaving, although I would say some of the crowd has cleared out, more of the protester types who I was with down earlier near the White House. They've started to leave, but again, they keep saying they have the right to be here. They keep calling this a peaceful protest, although it's been far from it. George.
Okay, Martha, thanks very much. Let me bring Tony Cardenas in. Congressman Tony Cardenas from California. Where are you, sir, at this point? I know you can't say the exact location. I assume you're in a safe location. Are you still in the Capitol Hill complex?
I'm still in the Capitol complex. I feel safe at the moment, and my prayers go out to all of those officers and all those individuals who are doing everything they can to keep us safe. And I heard what my colleague said. Yes, these officers have shown tremendous and that's the respect that any individual deserves. But when somebody tries to break into the Capitol of the United States of America, that right there is an atrocity, and it's a stain on our history forevermore.
And the question is, where do we go from here at this point? Have you received any indication from leadership on?
And this, they're doing this now after several hours that these people have been out here. Going inside the building, occupying the balconies, occupying the center steps, and also the south end steps and the north end steps of the east side of the Capitol here. Now you see the police kind of walking them slowly off of the steps. Now this is unfolding peacefully right now. Let's hope that it stays that way. But a short time ago, Wolf, we can also tell you that rioters were standing on top of these cars and, waving flags and really just kind of throwing caution to the wind. And there were police not too far away just kind of watching them. But now some of the riot police are just kind of slowly and peacefully moving people off of these steps.
Yeah, let's see what happens. These are critical moments. Chief Ramsey is still with us. You were the police chief here in the District of Columbia.
Into their eyes, and I know that they're men and women, husbands and wives, and again, I'm praying for them, and I know the kind of hearts that they have. They're tough and they know how to do their job, but at the same time, they do so restrained, and I'm so glad that unfortunately that many of them have been injured. It just got reported, but I hope and pray that that is at a minimum, and that we can move forward as quickly as possible with our democratic process.
Congressman Cardenas, thanks very much for your time. We're seeing video now of members of the protesters, the mob, appearing to smash media equipment right there, as you see the police looking by and perhaps lighting a fire. Rachel Scott has been on the scene during the day. What can you tell us about what you're seeing? Apparently we lost Rachel as we see the standoff there at the Capitol, but we do have Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, a member of the House leadership. A day you thought you'd never see, I'm sure, Congressman.
Without question, George, and we should pray for our nation and make sure that we never see a day like this again. The Capitol was breached. It was stormed by traitors, people engaging in treasonous and seditious behavior, incited by the President of the United States of America, and he should tell his supporters in clear and unequivocal terms to stand down and stand down immediately.
That's not what you heard from the earlier statement from the President?
The President seems incapable intellectually of communicating a clear and direct message to his so-called supporters who have breached the Capitol, injured officers, placed innocent lives at risk, and turned America into something that I thought we would never see in a democracy anchored in the principle of the rule of law. But we are going to return to the Capitol Dome as soon as it's safe. We're not going to allow mob rule to take over. We're going to complete our work. We're going to certify the results of the Electoral College. The people have spoken. The Electoral College has spoken. The courts have spoken. Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States of America. He will be sworn in on January 20th.
Do you have any idea on how this is all going to unfold, when that's going to be able to happen, what the plans are to secure the Capitol?
We're following the guidance of the Capitol Police, the Sergeant at Arms, who, as I understand it, have called in additional resources to secure the Capitol. The members are being patient but anxious to return to our constitutional responsibilities. Obviously, we will follow the direction of our public safety officers, but we're committed to the principle that no one is above the law, and we have a constitutional job to do. We are going to do it. We will not abandon our post.
And going forward, as you said, Joe Biden has been elected. He will be inaugurated on those same Capitol steps in just 14 days. How does the new Congress move forward, we hope, in some way together and to heal the wounds from what we've seen today?
Well, Joe Biden is the right man at the right time with respect to bringing our country together. With someone who has indicated from the very beginning upon his election that he's not going to be the president just for Democrats. He's going to be the president for Democrats, independents, and Republicans, for those who voted for him, those who voted against him. And he's got the experience, the credibility, the authenticity, and the intellect to do it. But I'll also say, George, that there has to be accountability for what took place today. This attack on our democracy and the Congress and the Capitol and the rule of law should not be tolerated, and all options should be on the table.
I want to follow up on that, because your colleague, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, is saying she's drawing up articles of impeachment for President Trump for what she's seen since the election, for the abuses of power she's seen since the election. Is that something that's on the table?
We haven't had an opportunity to talk as a caucus. We haven't had an opportunity to convene and discuss how we move forward in the context of accountability. But when I say all options are on the table, I mean all options should be on the table,
including impeachment
and every other process,
including impeachment.
All options are on the table, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you for your time today. Stay safe. Good luck in the coming hours. I want to bring in Trish Turner from the Capitol as well. Trish, you've been getting some reporting on the senators starting to meet and try to figure out the way forward.
Yeah, that's right, George. We were a group of the media, including myself and one of my ABC colleagues, Ali Kokorin. We were escorted by Capitol Police and ATF officers to one of the Senate buildings. We've been asked not to say what the location is. Kind of seems like they brought us here to make sure that we are safe along with the senators, so we're near where they're meeting. They're in one of the larger hearing rooms on the Capitol complex, and they are they're meeting, trying to figure the way forward. As you heard from the congressman there, they are determined to move forward. It's unclear if they're able to actually keep the Senate debate session going on, over the first objection. We did come in contact with one of the supporters of the objection, Senator Mike Braun of Indiana. We tried to ask him. He said none of this should be tolerated. None of the violence should be tolerated, the looting, and storming of the Capitol. But we tried to ask him if this might spur him to withdraw the objections, because we know that there are at least two more that Senate Republicans were prepared to support, and he would not answer that question. So unclear how they're going to move forward. We did see, we've seen senators moving in and out. I don't believe there's a lot of business they can conduct in this hearing room. But we do have poll reporters inside there. It's sort of a continuity of government situation at the moment, which is rather surreal. But that's the situation where we are at the moment.
Okay, Trish Turner, thank you very much. As this has all been unfolding, more news has been made in the political world. I want to bring in Rick Klein, our political director. It is now official. John Ossoff, the Democrat, has won in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago.